Hello, and welcome to another episode of Dealer Talk. I'm very excited today because we're going to be talking about some new technology within the industry. And, it's very exciting to have these types of conversations because it keeps us looking forward. But before we make the introduction to our guest, I just want to pass it over to Erik Nelson, my co-host. Erik, what's going on, brother? How you doing, man?
Well, Herb, look, man, I got to tell you, El Tryptophan is kicking my butt today. I went ahead and stuffed myself on some turkey, and then what I did was I felt that wasn't enough. I went back for seconds and then thirds. Yes, I'm a little sleepy, so if you hear some snoring in the background, don't worry about it. Just move on anyways.
All right, man. I'll keep that in mind. Hey, so before we get started here, I just wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit. Obviously, you're in the dealership in the day-to-day, right, doing your thing. And I think the conversation today is going to be pretty interesting because we're going to be talking about some technology that's somewhat new to the automotive industry, and I think there's definitely some potential there. But it has me thinking about the value of technology, right, and how the industry has progressed and where we are today, right, and how consumers, buyers and sellers kind of connect. So I just want to kind of get your thoughts on that, man. Like what are you seeing on your end? Like how has technology kind of played a role, in 2018 for you guys?
Yeah, well, listen, it's made us, and I'm going to use the word hypersensitive because that's really what it is. I think as an industry, it's made us hypersensitive to any kind of change. And sometimes that can be good and bad. Good in the aspect it does make it a more seamless, transparent way to be able to gain consumers and transact with those consumers. Bad because the technology changes so fast and so much that sometimes, as dealerships and dealer principals and GMs and owners and whatnot, these are all gentlemen that are over 40 years old. That kind of technology sometimes scares the heck out of them, and they're not really sure exactly which is the best approach, right? But my thought process on that has always been is that, look, man, if it's something that can benefit your company, and you just kind of have to jump in and try and to swim as best as you can, because I don't know if there's necessarily one way that's better than the other, but there's definitely ways that you can jump in and tweak it to fit your specific markets. I mean, there's a lot of benefits there. I mean, I love the fact that technology. I love it. I absolutely love it. But it's sometimes scary. But I think that we definitely have to embrace it, learn about it, consume as much as humanly possible, and much like the turkey, ask for seconds or thirds, right?
Would you say that you guys within your store are you open to, or do you adopt to the philosophy of try anything at least once and see what sticks, or do you are you very kind of methodical when it comes to putting new processes in place? Do you kind of learn about that specific product, figure out where it fits, if it fits at all, and then implement it? Or are you the type of dealership that likes to experiment and try anything and see how it works?
Yeah, I think that for my specific dealership, sometimes we get caught up in where the mentality is for those folks that are in charge. They think that change, just for the sake of change, is good. When in fact it might not necessarily be so much. So I mean, I know myself because I have somewhat of an influence in the dealership. I know kind of what I'm after. So and I look for those things that can help us achieve those goals, because my market's so small, but you definitely have to embrace the opportunity of technology, and you have to have a plan in place too, because I mean, just walking into it not knowing what's going on is not going to benefit you at all. That's why I'm so excited to talk to Stacy, because that's his technology coming online. I'm sure scares the heck out of a lot of people, but the reality is that it's time to wake up, not everything's a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with that, but I also think that there's just so much out there, man. Like, how do you know what, you know what I mean? Like, how do you know what works? How do you know what doesn't? And then if you think about the decision makers within the automotive industry, these are people that are busy, man. They have so much stuff to do,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's interesting to me. How would you, um, you know, figure, no, like, how do you figure out what works, what doesn't work for you? Like what's that process like, for the stores that are super successful at it? Because I have some stores that you think that they've put a lot of thought into the stuff that they've done, but then when I have those consultative conversations, I realize that a lot of the things that they kind of implemented, they've done just because it was the new shiny object. They got it, tried it out, then there's no adoption, there's no accountability, and then they end up just dropping it. You know what I mean? So
I do. So my thoughts on it is that you really need to create a department. You need to pay attention, and communication is key. It's not only the foundation of a phenomenal marriage, it makes for a great business as well. So I believe there needs to be a department that's paying attention to those things. Obviously, they're taking notes. They know what works for us and what doesn't work for us, and they reach for those companies and technologies that'll help better implement whatever their vision and goal is. But the fact of the matter is, you're exactly that. You hit the nail on the head. Was that everybody's so busy, as they should be,
right.
As they should be. But it almost takes a separate department, not somebody that that used to be the GM or the sales manager could give out the radio spot for the week, or the TV ad or the newspaper ad, and they'd look it over. Yep, it looks good, and it's more than that these days, especially with technology. It's a whole different game. It's a better game, by the way. So that's my thoughts on it.
Yeah. So. So anyway, excited for this conversation. Let's introduce our guest for today. Our guest is Mr. Stacy James Fry, and he's going to be talking to us about, like I said, somewhat of a new technology within the industry. And without further ado, Stacy, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well, guys. Thank you. I've been enjoying listening to Erik and you talk, so I'm feeling primed and ready here.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Wow. So. Before we get into it, just to kind of, introduce you to the audience, can you just give us a little bit of a recap on your background?
Sure. Yeah, I have a bit of a diverse background, but I'll try and summarize it really quick. So I am Canadian. That's number one. So try not to hold that against me. And I'll try not to say A as much. And I guess my background is, when I was growing up, I was a freestyle skier. So that was about 12 years of my life. So I did freestyle skiing when it was first being introduced into the Olympics. When we had the Olympics here in Calgary, where I'm living currently. And sort of fast forward, I got into film and television in a city called Vancouver, which is well known. I'd say a good 30% of all television today is being shot there. And I got into the visual effects and animation side through a company called Stash Media. So essentially that was a showcase of all the best visual effects, animation, motion graphics coming out of the studios around the world, packaged into a DVD that was shipped out to subscribers on a monthly basis. When I came on board, the 2008 housing crisis was just around the corner. The economy was already starting to slow down. Subscribers were starting to bleed away. So I suggested that they change their business model from, DVD subscription model to stream it online, open up the package to all the student base. And so essentially I was spearheading what turned out to be the first successful subscription-based streaming model. So we beat Netflix by, I think, about 14 months. And it was obviously not a mass market subscription platform because it's just a very specific niche. But the technology, we established it, we showed it worked, and then people from Netflix came buzzing around, so I had a lot of conversations with them, and they went off and did what they did. So I've always been, and then what did I do? Well, I just decided to move to the Ukraine and teach ancient Mayan history at the oldest university there. And yeah, so I did that for a year and then came back. And when I came back, I started my own company doing commercial production for big brands like FedEx, Coca-Cola, a whole variety of different groups. Some states, some nations in terms of their ministries, doing video for them for their special projects and stuff. And that led me obviously into the world of marketing and digital technologies in general, IT, what's happening in that area, because communications, of course, is at the forefront of any market. So that sort of brings us to where I am now, which is CEO of two companies. I have my intellectual property company, Maya Media, and now one of our agendas, one of our initiatives of the last 13 months, or just a bit less than 13 months, is SmartBots. And SmartBots, do you want me to describe it, or do you
please.
Please do.
So SmartBots is basically based on what we saw Kia, the manufacturer. They developed something called the Kia Niro, which is a chatbot. Now, most automotive people I talk to think that chat is just that window that pops up on your website where you can chat with the customer. This is a little different. This operates through Facebook Messenger. And what it does is it actively goes out and initiates conversations with customers through their Messenger application. And there's about 1.34 billion people who use that application now. And I think the market penetration in the United States alone is over 80%. So over 80% of people who own a smartphone in the United States have Messenger. And so they can be talked to directly by an automated AI-driven, so artificial intelligence-driven, somewhat pre-scripted bot. And that's where people start to get scared, as you were saying. Yeah. And so, okay, just for your audience, let me just summarize this. You remember the video store, right?
Yes.
Like you mean like a Blockbuster type deal?
Yeah, a Blockbuster type deal, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And what technology more or less replaced them overnight?
Redbox.
The streaming,
Netflix, yep.
Your HBOs, your Netflix, your...
Wait, no, I don't know. Really? I think Redbox was the one that got rid of them first, right? And then...
Redbox challenged them. And then the consumer's desire and ability to look and consume content on their mobile devices, their laptops, their computers, their smart TVs.
I think that Netflix is really the one that profited off of it, yeah?
Well, Netflix gets the big name on it, but I guess basically the idea is that streaming technology and peer-to-peer technology took over. And people who would normally go to the video store were younger people in general. Again, in general, right? And as a result, the market evaporated. Now, I use that analogy because, and people laugh at me in the industry because I've talked to certain dealerships about this and said, look, if you don't adopt this technology, you're going to get pushed away by it, because look what happened with Kia. I mean, they were able to engage with, at this point, I think over 2 million consumers directly. And since the launch of their Kia Niro chatbot, they've sold close to, I think it's 275,000 cars directly, without the need for a single salesperson, a single financing person, a single dealership.
But where? Okay, so obviously we got to get into the specifics here. But where do you get that information from? That's pretty interesting to me.
Well, we're kind of through my CTO and through my engineer and through my network of people, I am connected to their engineering team. So wow. I know from the inside how much it is. Now, publicly, they've announced, and this article's been out for almost a year, that they were able to sell 100,000 cars on 1.12 million engagements through their bot. So they've got 1 in 10 conversion rate. Now that conversion rate comes from a complete cold call, if you want to call it that, because it's an interaction on a bot, right?
Right. So here and I'm sorry to kind of interject here, but I'm just to kind of put this in perspective for the listeners, right? So the way this works is, there's some sort of customer profile.
Yeah.
And then
so here's how it works. Like the Kia Niro chatbot, all they did is they launched a traditional ad through the Super Bowl. And they invited the audience to go onto their messenger and look for their bot called Nero in Facebook Marketplace, which existed and was brand new on Messenger. So you could go onto Messenger and you could search up a specific business. So people found the bot there, connected. As soon as they connected, Facebook handed Kia all the information about that individual. That person did not have to hand over their name, did not have to hand over their email, did not have to hand over their age, their specific likes and dislikes, and all the pattern information about their activity on Facebook up to that point. It was all delivered to Kia. We thought that was pretty special because it is in digital marketing, as you know, like if you do an email campaign, you have to get your opens. So you have to get your open rate up. You got to get your click-through rate up. Then you have to get them to a landing page on your website, for instance.
Right.
And then they have to more or less volunteer to give you their information, or they go away. So if they go away, you've got tracking technology to chase them down and see where they are, try and put new ads in front of them wherever they go to get them back to that place. And again, hope that they give you that information.
But with this, the bot is looking for that profile customer and engages the customer on its own.
Yeah, well, in the back end of Facebook, if you ever use Facebook as an ad platform, which everybody should.
Yeah.
I mean, you can target on the basis of, I can't remember the exact number, but I think it's about 270 different specific targeting criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So if you know anything about your customer, and every dealership knows a lot about their customer base, because they're catering to a very specific PMA, they're catering to a very specific demographic of people in a very specific area. So they know who their people are. And they know who they also want to get out to that they're having a hard time getting. Or they know that somebody in their competition in their PMA is dominating radio or dominating TV or dominating print or, and so a lot of dealerships maybe can't compete by just throwing dollars at those traditional ad platforms. Well, here's a good way. You can get right into somebody's smartphone and stay right in front of them on a daily basis through their messenger application where they're having most of their important conversations with their most important people.
So Stacy, you said something that kind of caught my ear here. You said that everybody should advertise on Facebook, which I totally agree with you.
Why do you agree?
Because Facebook is one of the things that I offer as a consultant. And you just can't get more bang for your buck. I mean, it's still to this point, I don't think that that's going to be the case forever, but I still think that cost-wise is super cost-effective because you're targeting, you can get very specific on who you want to engage on Facebook. Plus, you can put that ad directly, if you're matching instead versus posting, you can put that ad on that specific customer's page, and you can do that over and over and over again for a fraction of the cost. For example, like if you did a direct mail campaign or you paid somebody to make phone calls for you, things that dealerships do or things that dealerships spend money on.
Yeah. I mean, I know dealerships that'll spend, they'll pay somebody $40,000 a year to sit there on the phone and bring people to the dealership by cold calling them.
Right.
And then they're going to give them, $300 or $600 per sale on a car every time that person does. So you're paying that person somewhere between $80,000 to $110,000 a year if they're good. Our system costs $2,500 a month, and you can do that thing on automatic with 8,000 people every day.
Right, but so here's the question, right?
Person,
so it got me thinking about is it that specific, like like Facebook matching, like you can get to specific customer, like John Smith on this particular PMA or whatever, and engage him directly. There's no legal ramifications or anything like that.
No, not at all. I mean, if you have a database, you can load it down into Facebook, and they'll create a lookalike audience right inside your PMA. And once you see, as you roll out ads on Facebook, the information gets more specific, and it also gets more targeted. So I don't want to get into the nuances of how Facebook works as an ad platform, but let's just say this. When you start an ad campaign on Facebook, usually start with $5 because you want to start giving Facebook the opportunity to get better at doing its job.
Right.
So you roll out your ad on $5. You see who in your general targeting, because you create your general. I call it general targeting, even though it's 270 different categories of targeting selection. That's still pretty general. So what happens is the Facebook starts to look at who's actually interacting with your ad content and on what ad category. Because as you were saying, that you can put ads on their Facebook stream, like on their newsfeed.
Right.
But there's other places you can put it. And one of the other places you can put it is right into their Messenger. And obviously in Messenger, it's a communication platform. So you're not just putting an ad up, you're inviting them to a conversation. And so getting back to what I was saying, as soon as Facebook starts to see who interacts, it'll give you the option just through a single button click to optimize for engagements or traffic or a whole variety of different categories that you want to optimize for. So depending on what your messaging is, let's say you've got a new dealership. Let's just say that. You've got a new dealership that's opening up in a new PMA. Let's use that as an example. So you're starting from scratch in a lot of ways. So you got to go out and you got to create brand awareness. You got to get conversations. You got to get them down to the dealership. You got to get them. You're not even really selling cars at that point. You're just telling people you're there. Take a different type of dealership, one that's been there for, Erik, your dealership, how long has it been in that location?
It's only been there not very long, like 1931, something like that.
It's been a long time, right? So it's the one that everybody's seen since they were born, driving by. That's a different type of ad, and it's a different type of agenda that you're going for. You're trying to get them into a conversation. You're trying to get them talking a little more. I mean, you guys are best at what you do in terms of how you want to craft your message. I mean, that's what I've noticed about dealerships. They're really good at creating their messaging. It's just a matter of putting it in a different place now. And instead of getting them to put it on print and radio and television or even on Facebook or even on Google, you're getting them engaged into a conversation. And the difference maker is that as soon as they actually press get started to join that conversation, all the information about that person is handed to your CRM. And they're now in a conversation that is handled by technically your best salesperson, right? Because you're involved in crafting how you want that conversation to go and what it's about. So you're able to put your best foot forward and make sure that they're getting the experience that you want them to have. And the objective, of course, is to get them to book their test drives, to get them making financing applications, to get them calling in, to get them coming down, to having them book service appointments. So all the traditional sort of objectives are the same. It's just a different channel now. And instead of it being a static advertisement, it's now a conversation that you don't have to manage with 500 people in a business development center, because that's how many people you'd need to handle the amount of conversations the bot can handle at any one time.
So let me ask you this. So from the dealership aspect, so have you found the smart bot application to be useful in any other industry?
Well, it's being used a lot in banking, particularly with co-ops and local banks, getting people to sort of transition from the big banks to their location. So getting out there, just getting people to have a conversation on their phone and saying, here's the features and benefits coming down here. Here's an incentive right now. Why don't you come on down and check it out? And they sort of approach it on an ethical thing. And then in retail, of course, Amazon's using these. They're one of the forerunners, really. And then you got your Google Assistant now, right? So it's out there already. People just don't realize it, maybe because it's subtle. And typically the people who are engaging with it are people who are embracing technology as it comes out, right? The first adopters are always the first adopters, but when it hits that early majority, that's when things really catch steam. And we're really on the tipping point of it becoming an early majority thing. So our objective at SmartBox is to really make SmartBox, the actual messenger app, the de facto place where people look for cars no matter where they are. So when they think they're interested in selling their car, or they want to find a car, or they're looking to test their soft pull on their financing to see if they qualify for a new car, or if they want to look in for trade-in value, anything they want to do, they'll go there and look for it. And then, of course, we become the gateway to the dealership.
What data?
The dealership resist that and say, well, we don't understand it, or we're not interested, and all these silly things they say, when really what they're saying is, we don't understand it, we're scared.
What data do you have on consumer engagement? Like, do they, you know, because I'm just trying to put myself as a consumer. If I was on Facebook, you know, just checking, I don't know, how my friends are doing or whatever, you know, and then all of a sudden I get this ding for, hey, you know, you want to talk about buying my 2019 truck or whatever. I wonder how that would be. I mean, if I'm looking for a car, I'd probably be pretty interested in that potentially. Yeah, but if I'm not,
we're talking about finessing the step to engagement, right? So it's not all just send a message into Messenger. There are 8 different ad types on Facebook, of which Messenger is one. So you're going to cover the gamut. You're not just going to send messages in Messenger. In fact, that's not the primary ad spend. The primary ad spend is in video. Typically, and video appears all over Facebook. It doesn't just appear in their newsfeed. You've got live video, you've got other video, you've got in Messenger video, you've got on newsfeed video, you've got private messaging, you've got you can even use Google. You can even use your SMS. You can say, click this link to join a conversation on Messenger. So that's a very quick way to just boost your engagement right away, because we all know that SMS has a 98% open rate and conversion rates are really high. So if you want to get people into that, you buy a phone list that's an opt-in for SMS, or if you've got one in-house, you can just migrate people right over. I mean, there's just 100 ways to make a use and get people into the conversation. But the point is, it's like having your best salesperson go out to a person right when they're ready to have that conversation, because a person is always driving when they're ready to engage. And if you're not there at that moment, you're losing, right? So that's why people have chat on their websites. But what if it's 2 a.m? What if it's 10 at night and the dealership's closed and there isn't somebody to answer that chat? You know, there's all kinds of things. And then you've got and by the way, this chatbot can sit on your website as a replacement for your old chat, so that it's always there, and anybody who engages with it automatically drops into your CRM. Right. So there are a lot of nuances to this, and I think that's part of the reason it's difficult for people to grasp is that it has so much utility that typically when you go to a dealership and you're approaching them, if you're say you're in your position, or you're trying to focus on one thing that they can grasp and really just nail it home, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, but in this case, you're a little bit at a disadvantage, because when they ask you a question, there's 9 answers, right? Because there's 9 different ways to do it.
Right.
So the utility is so high, and the conversion rate. So you were asking about conversion data. So that gets into the specifics of the conversion on every ad type from Facebook. But overall, it's a 4 times better, on average, engagement than any other ad type. So comparing how an ad, a traditional ad, any digital ad, performs from ad click to your home page or the specific page about a specific car anywhere on your site, and getting that information and getting them engaged, it's a 4 times increase over that kind of methodology.
What's the biggest resistance that you see from decision makers on this deal? Because it sounds pretty amazing.
Right. Well, it's new, right? And so because they're unfamiliar with it, and because they're probably sitting there going, how do we use this thing? Right? what do we do with it? I don't even understand it. I mean, I go through the whole presentation, or I have some people go through the whole presentation, or we deal with things at a high level, and then we start getting into specifics. And then it starts to look like a giant monster in their mind. and they just want to walk away. And so they'll create objections. You know how that
Right,
is,
right.
right? And typically, so it's just a screen for what's really going on. And what's really going on is it makes them nervous because they don't understand it, and because it's $2,500, they think, well, if I don't even know how to use it, how am I going to get value out of it? But I think the bottom line is it's got to sell 10 cars at least per month, right, in order to pay for itself.
Right.
But the reality is, if you switch some ads over and you get one person in your place, and this is how I look at it, is like, think of it as one person interacting with the dashboard of the SmartBot is able to do the job of 500 people in a traditional business development center, and just get them sitting on that thing until they learn it. And we'll walk them through that process, obviously. Now, if we're dealing with a larger dealership group, for instance, where we're dealing with 18, rooftops or whatever, we'll do that for them. They don't even have to touch it. But if it's an individual dealership, they maybe can't afford that extra add-on service. So they'll just need to sit one person down and sit them on it and get them used to it, and then using it, and then they'll see the value immediately, because it'll start booking those test drives like right away. And if you want to attack your existing market, your warm market, and say, okay, we got to boost our parts and service penetration rate here because we need to get our co-op fees or whatever, that's the ad type that you do first. By the way, even though we can't look at it on your podcast here, the dashboard has increased to integrate with Craigslist and Google Market and Facebook Market and all these other marketplaces that people are starting to get excited about at dealerships. Right. So we mentioned that, and it's just a single push button. So your entire inventory is integrated with the system, so you can look at your entire inventory. In fact, anybody can look at, once they're in that engagement, once they're in that messenger engagement, they can surf around within Facebook Messenger your entire inventory and start favoriting things, looking at things. And by the way, all that information is pumped right into your CRM.
So
you know exactly what they're doing. It's just that you got to have that one person sitting at the panel going to war. I look at it like that. It's one person playing battleship.
So let's talk about that for a second. So, as we started out the conversation, Erik and I, I posed some questions about, technology, right? Because a lot of the stores that I talk with, a lot of them actually start these, new shiny object syndrome, so to speak. Yeah. They see something, they buy it just because it's the new thing. But then there's no adoption, there's no accountability, and then they end up canceling and never got the full value of that service.
That's something that perked my ears right away when you said that earlier, Herb. So yeah, please continue.
How is this? Is this one of those deals that you think that is a minimal? It requires minimal adoption in the sense of, hey, we can just put this in. We got that one person. We'll train that one person, and then from there on, it'll kind of prove itself. Or is this something that you have to, like most things, has to come from the management down to, hey guys, this is the new deal. This is how we're doing stuff, and kind of rechange that whole process within the store.
Mm-hmm. Well, as you can imagine, I'm not a lifetime member of the dealership world. I'm sort of coming into this from the outside and learning as I go how dealerships operate. And from what I've discovered, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or support me in this, but they all seem to operate differently. I mean, they all have a typical sort of operations, but decision-making can be all over the map in terms of how these initiatives get adopted and who drives these adoptions. And I mean, a lot of dealerships are just kind of 9 people working on their own, I've noticed. But when it comes to decisions, they all have to come to the table and speak their piece, even though they don't really, they're not really working together as well as they maybe could or should, or I don't know, Herb, you tell me, but that seems to be what I see, is that dealerships are in a bit of chaos in general because things are moving so quick.
Right.
Everything that they're doing, every thought that they have is always interrupted by a new deal coming across their desk. or a new fire they got to put out somewhere. And
yeah, no,
every
there's
month is like a new call to war.
right. There's definitely a lot of a lot of things happening for sure, and like you said, things are going in all these different directions. But I guess that's why I'm kind of wondering, just for the audience, right? If they were to adopt this or to consider this, how much effort they need to put into this to really make it work, to really see it. I mean, is it something that they have to kind of retrain their whole staff?
I would delegate somebody. I mean, most dealerships now have some digital ad spend. And whoever is managing that ad spend and looking at and tracking the results, whether it's an in-house digital marketing person or if it's somebody in your upper management or your marketing director or your sales manager, whoever it is, put that person there and get them to look at it and use it. And once it doesn't take long, because the dashboard is very similar to all other CRMs and it integrates with their CRM. So it's really not hard to look at the data and then start going, oh yeah, I need to do this. And then of course, part of our subscription, every month we sit down with you for a couple hours and say, okay, what have you done? What have you been doing? Here's an opportunity. Take these best practices ideas.
Right.
Like we always hand them a couple of ideas right off the bat. So for instance, birthdays. You can target people on Facebook according to their birthday. And so you can send them a special offer that they'll see, or that the people in their lives will see, that's a special offer within a week of their birthday. And who doesn't want a special offer on their birthday, right? They'll look at it at least, right? So that's a quick way to get them, boom, into the messenger thing. And that's something you can automate. So that's not something you have to, once it's set up to run, you've got your specific ad spending and how many people in your target market and your target areas, Herb, you can target right down to square block on Facebook. So if you have very specific PMA that you have to stay in, or you want to attack someone else's PMA, or you want to go outside your normal market zone, you can figure out how you want to do it, but that's just one way. So you can say, okay, we're going to send out an ad to everybody who's having a birthday in this week, and we're going to automate it so that every week, everybody who's got a birthday coming up in that week is going to see this ad. It's going to make a special offer for them. We're going to invite them to have that conversation in Messenger, and that's how we're going to get people, or one way we're going to get people into that conversation. And that's just one thing that you can do. You can set it up on automatic, and boom, you've got people coming down because, like I said, everybody loves, getting a special offer on their birthday, and they'll look at it, or their significant family members and friends will look at it for them, because you can target them as well, right? And get people using things. So there's different strategies that we just sort of hand the dealership right off the bat, so that they'll get going and they'll start seeing the value right away in the utility. And once they see that little bit of value in utility, they're going to put more focus on it, because, oh geez, everybody wants to make more money at the dealership, right? So it's kind of like giving them those running incentives. You give them some 2 or 3 strategies right off the top that work really well, no matter what kind of advertising you're using. But by God, it works really well here because the conversion rates are 4 times higher. Oh, great. So let's take a stronger look at this now. But from our perspective, what we've come up against is the fact that we're unknown. Okay? And because we're unknown and we're not a traditional service provider in the market, we're not a Cox Automotive, we're not a CDK, we're not a e-dealer, we're not a these and that, and these known entities. We have to we shift gears from trying to work with dealerships directly and just working through a reseller. So we're talking to a few right now that I think will help get in, and they see the value here. They want to have this on their roster. And I think that's going to speed the process along. But the incentive that I give them is like, look, this is going to replace the dealership, or it's going to strengthen the dealership. So you got to get them to adopt it now. And if they adopt it now, they're going to secure their position. If they don't, if they turn away from it, like, here's an example. Like the video stores could have stayed alive if they had offered a streaming network through their brand.
Exactly.
Right? But they didn't. They avoided the technology. They said, no, it will never replace. It's just like books, right? Like, actually, that's one area where I think books will stick around, because eventually it comes to the point where people don't want to read everything on the screen. So books will stick around. But bad analogy. But well, there was that debate, right? There was that whether or not it would be replaced, and it turns out, people really like books. But do people really like the dealership experience? Ask yourself that. Do they? Not really. I mean, if a millennial can boil it down to a messenger conversation where they can get all that information and pick their car and get their financing done and then go pick it up, and it only takes 20 minutes versus the sales process that goes on at the dealership, and no offense to the dealers, but people don't like it that much.
Yeah, no, listen, it's been an amazing conversation. I really, I'm glad that you came on and did this deal with us. I really like this technology as far as just kind of an add-on to the industry in general. Obviously there's more to see.
Our objective was to help the dealership. When we saw what Kia did, we thought, my God, this is an opportunity that dealers get a pounce on, and we developed the platform past what Kia Niro does now. So we have more AI capability and all that. So the value is there. It's just getting it out the door has been, it's been slow because it is a lot to describe to people. It's a lot to show them how it works. And so our business model has been to just shift from one-to-one conversations with the dealership to now to the resellers. And the resellers are pouncing on it. We have a couple of people that are interested in investing and taking it out, and they think it's going to roll on. So that's what's happening now. So.
Right. So for the listeners, we'll put Stacy's contact information in the show notes if you want to reach out and get some more information on this. I really think that, if nothing else, you need to start paying attention to this technology and learning more about it. I think Stacy made some good points in the beginning about, early adoption and getting on these things before they become.
I mean, if you look at it like that, you go, geez, if I could have done this, that, the other thing when it first came out. I mean, Bitcoin's probably not something that everybody's interested in, but imagine this. People used to pick up Bitcoin for 20 cents, right? They used to have Bitcoin for 20 cents. It was a joke back then, but now it's worth $5,000.
Right.
So people, went from having a pool of 1,000 to 5,000 Bitcoin that were just like little play digital money to now they're billionaires. Right, and that's just an example of what it's like to ride that wave of early adoption into the early majority and then the late majority. It's like if you're early to the game, you get the biggest benefit.
Exactly, yeah. So, we'd love to talk more, and maybe it's at some other opportunity. Before we close it out, I always ask a question to anybody that comes on the show, and that question is, where do you see the automotive industry headed in the next 5 years, and why?
Well, I mean, I think this is going to be a big part of it. I think AI is going to take over a lot of customer service and the typical interaction that dealerships pay for and personnel. And I think in general, people are going to be looking for their cars and buying their cars more through an online or mobile process. And I think, and I've had these conversations with Erik, and you can disagree with me if you like, but I think that changes the business model of the dealership from more like an automotive retailer. It's like if your cars are actually being sold through that modality, you've got all that retail space. You can transform it. You can sell other things. Once they get down to the dealership to pick up their vehicle, you're basically selling them 1,000 other things, or it becomes a service location. I mean, that's speaking really long term, and I look at technology driving those changes more than anything. And there's always going to be resistance to that change, but really the consumer decides. And the consumers, by 2025, millennials are going to be 75% of the United States workforce. That's a stat you can look up. And what do? They do everything. They buy everything. They research everything through their mobile devices. And that's just how they do it. And their objective is to have the most low impact experience as possible. They don't want to spend a lot of time face to face, believe it or not. They just prefer the bots. I mean, that's just how it works. So I didn't make up the rules. I'm just following the current here. So that's where I go with it, and I think that I come across like I'm just out there to try and like ruin the dealership marketplace or something. But the reality is that I'm just showing you this is what's going to happen, and it's already starting. And the funny thing about that is, especially with AI, is it's going to be overnight change. I get a little bit worried about the dealerships that are so resistant they don't even want to look at it, or they think it's a joke, or whatever. Like they have their reasons, but they don't look into it, or they have their arguments for not believing in it, or whatever the attitude is. And I'm a little bit worried about all the people that are employed there. I know that's a bit alarmist to say, but you think about it. How many people are employed in customer service and sales in the dealership industry in the United States? How many people are there?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you guys for having me. So I appreciate that. I'm sure that's giving a lot of people some things to think about.
Yeah,
this is probably
sure.
why it's so hard to.
Probably so conversation that could go on for hours, bro.
Yeah.
It's just there's so much here, and the fact of the matter is that we've had conversations in the past. Is that AI is not something that's coming; it's something that's here. I mean, that's just the truth. So I mean, no need to fight it. It's just a reality.
That's all the time we have, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope you're feeling all right out there.
And as usual, we'll talk later. So you made it all the way to the end. Thank you so much. Just want to remind everybody to go to the website at dealertalk.biz. Leave us your questions. Give us your feedback. We really appreciate it. And we'll talk later.